Okay, so if I've covered the same topic 3 times in 3 days and I tell you I have bombshell updates on that topic, I'm telling you, I am not lying. I'm not exaggerating. I have bombshells in this video. One of which has to do with the accuser. And if this does not change your understanding of what happened here when you hear this, then it's going to. Just bottom line, it's going to. And the only way that it wouldn't is if you already knew this, and I have not seen any other channels cover this particular data point, so I gotta assume that you didn't know because I just found out and it absolutely melted my brain. So we got that. Also, a bunch of new information about Vince McMahon, okay? Not just his history of doing this stuff inside of the company, but things related to his daughter, okay? His daughter, all right? Now, when I read this to you, what I'm going to show you, again, if this is not like blood coming out of your ears, then I don't know. You're not like me, man. This shocked me to the core, to be perfectly honest with you. And then I want to talk to you more about what we talked about yesterday related to the corporate strategy that led to him getting pushed out by Ari and TKO. And I will quickly go back over that again when we get to that section. I'm going to just timestamp all of these because we have like 5 different sections of this. And then also going to talk about Brock Lesnar's involvement, which was much more extensive than I realized. And his career, as people are saying now, is probably over in WWE. He's not going to be at Royal Rumble anymore. This scandal led to him being essentially just removed completely from anything future in WWE for the foreseeable future. And here's the thing. I read the entire lawsuit now. I read it all. And if you were on my members only section, I read it members only. My intention with that video last night was to be able to read these things without having to censor myself, because there's so much stuff in the text messages where it's like, I can't say these words. I can only imply what they're saying. And so that was fun. You know, my members only, you'll laugh for sure in that video. But that started a sequence of research that I did last night that went way beyond what I already knew. And so I read part of it on there, but now I've read the whole thing. And there is some stuff in there about Vince McMahon and what he did, which I do not believe is even being disputed, because a lot of it is supported by actual text messages. That is just like, it's just so crazy. It is so, I can't believe some of this stuff, man. So when I tell you that however long this video is going to be, I've already been talking about it for 2.5 minutes, just introducing all of the topics. I'll do timestamps for each of them. And now coming back and recording this after I recorded the video, we ran completely out of time. And so we have multiple topics in this one, but then we also have a separate video about the Brock Lesnar and the really abusive, crazy stuff that Vince McMahon did is coming in a forthcoming video. And so that's what's going down. Check the timestamps if you want, or just watch it all the way through, and then same thing for the next video that'll also come out today. Before we get started though, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the channel? Why should I subscribe? Because I'll give you a great job with the channel. It's growing fast. Don't you want to be on this rocket ship? I really do. What do I have to do for it? Just subscribe, that's all. Don't worry, you won't be expected to do anything else. All right, so we're going to start with the sequence of events that led to Vince getting pushed out. I laid them out yesterday kind of in a hypothetical form. This information completely changes it and really puts context to how this happened. All right, so after multiple accusations of sexual misconduct against Mr. McMahon, the company continued to prosper, but in 2022, the Wall Street Journal began reporting on his history of settlement agreements with women. A special committee of WWE's board hired a law firm to conduct an investigation into the allegations against Mr. McMahon. Now, we don't know how that started, what the genesis of that was, but this coincided with when Janel Grant left the company and signed her NDA. Okay, so while the investigation's full findings have not been released, WWE said in a financial filing in 2022 that Mr. McMahon had personally made at least $14.6 million in payments to women who accused him of misconduct from 2006 to 2022, and that those payments should have been recorded as business expenses. Okay, so what that means is it means that they weren't recorded as business expenses. Okay, so when you think about the Harvey Weinstein thing, right, and all these NDAs that girls paid and the millions of dollars that they paid out in settlements to women so that they wouldn't talk about the things that he did, what they're saying is that those settlement payments were made in order to protect the reputation of an officer of the company. So if McMahon is making those payments individually, that is not being filed correctly for the company, right? It's like, and the reason you would do that is you don't want it associated with the company, okay? But since they are payments to protect the reputation of the chief executive officer, that absolutely is a business expense. And so they're saying that those were recorded incorrectly, okay? So Mr. McMahon resigned as WWE's chief executive and chairman during the investigation, but he remained the company's largest shareholder. Okay, so let's stop right there. So he resigned due to this investigation. Okay. So whatever was going on and whatever was coming out, he knew he was going to have to leave the company because of this scandal. He is Vince McMahon, the CEO of the company. So he is being pushed out due to this scandal. Imagine what that felt like to him. I have gone through a similar thing. I mean, obviously, like if we're comparing the stakes or size of the company to what I went through, we're talking about a tiger versus like a single fire ant, obviously. But I do know what it feels like to feel like something that you built is being taken away from you. I know exactly what that feels like. And so what he did is in early 2023, okay, he engineered a takeover of the board of the directors by removing 3 members and naming himself and 2 allies to take their place. Okay. This is what you need to understand about that. The board of directors are the real bosses of the company. So like Dana White obviously is the boss of UFC, but that's because he has allies on the board, right? So like him and Ari are on the board. I don't have any idea how many people are on the board of directors for UFC, but just for example's sake, let's say that there are 3 people, right? If Ari always votes with Dana and Dana are on the board, then they control the board. And so he doesn't really have a boss because he's the boss and then he controls the board also. All right. So what happened here is Vince McMahon, as the majority shareholder, was able to remove 2 people off the board and then replace them with people who would vote with him. And that's how he took the company back over. Okay. I don't know if that is clear, but that's what happened. All right. So days later, Stephanie McMahon resigned from the board and as WWE's co-chief executive officer, which means or sounds like him and his daughter were not allies in this thing. All right. I don't know for sure about that, but that is how that sounds. So here's where we get to the meat of this. Mr. McMahon put WWE up for sale and Endeavor, an entertainment colossus run by the Hollywood power broker Ari Emanuel, agreed to buy it. Endeavor combined WWE with another company that owns it, UFC, into the new public company TKO. Mr. McMahon became the chairman of TKO Group Board of Directors and retained minority interest in the company, but had no formal role at WWE. Okay, so what that is saying, I will define all of that for you, is that unless those 2 things are disconnected, which happened almost right on top of each other, then the reason that he put the company up for sale is because he was losing control of the company. Now, if you go in as the majority shareholder and you remove 2 people off the board and you replace them with your own allies and yourself, I mean, I'm sure he was already on the board, but you replace them with 2 of your allies that are going to vote with you, that is a hostile takeover of your company, okay? They pushed you out, you took them out, and you took the company back over. And so Ari Emanuel, in what seems to be a very Machiavellian move, or there's 2 options here. Okay, like I love this. Okay, because now I have the context of why, right? What I knew yesterday is that Ari and Endeavor stopped paying the girl, which meant that she was definitely going to come back and sue the company, which meant that this was going to go public and inevitably was going to lead to Vince McMahon getting pushed out. So you have one of 2 options here for why they would have done that. Okay, now, I mean, obviously there might be something else, but this is based on the information I have a hypothesis of 2 different options. One is that Ari knew from the jump that he was going to do this. And he's like, this is an opportunity for me to buy WWE, combine them and form TKO. I don't want Vince McMahon involved. I don't want his voice. He's going to be meddling and everything. And I don't want him near this thing, but I need him to get this acquisition done. And so he goes in, he makes a deal with Vince McMahon. He makes Vince McMahon feel as though he is still going to have control of the company by getting on the board of TKO as an executive vice or chairman of the board or whatever. And then he knows that he's eventually going to push him out, right? So, and he knows he can use this lawsuit to push him out because they knew about the details of this in due diligence before they acquired the company. Due diligence is where an acquiring company is going to go through all of the everything, okay? If you're going to pay if you're going to pay $1 million for a company, you are going to go into that company and you are going to do extensive research on the company so you understand every single thing because you need to know what you're buying, right? And so when it comes to something like this and a public investigation into misconduct, when I tell you there is no way they didn't look into this, I can't stress, for 100% sure, they extensively looked into the misconduct allegations and what these entailed. So what that means is that they knew and they planned on using this to push him out, or option 2 is Vince lied to Ari about them, right? And so when they did the due diligence, Vince showed him, oh, is this, you know, it's consensual. We got rid of her, whatever. We did this. And then, you know, and by the way, the reason why they would want him involved is for the IPO, is my hypothesis, right? Because they're going to IPO TKO, and they decide that having Vince and Dana next to each other is a beautiful image of this new company, and then they're going to push him out. But either way, the reason they push him out is because he always planned to do it, or Vince misled Ari and the acquiring, you know, whoever else is involved in due diligence on the Endeavor side about the true nature of this case. And then once they took it over and everything came in, they're like, this is nothing like what you said. You completely misrepresented it. We're going to stop paying her. She's going to sue, and we're going to push you out. Because when the details of this case come out, you can't stay on our board, and no one could argue that. Of course he's going to have to resign. So either he lied, or they did, or this is Machiavellian from the jump. So that's very, very interesting to me, and that is what it is. So that is story number one, and none of that is a bombshell. The bombshell, like I said, is going to have to do with Janel Grant, and that's going to be, I want to cover the thing about his daughter, and then we're going to go and talk about Janel. So moving over to that part of the story right now. Whoops, we're not ready for that yet. Jeez. So we're going to go back here and check this out. Okay, so this is the thing about his daughter. All right, this is nuts, man. So this is about Vince McMahon. I'm going to read this to you. He also appeared in the ring for decades and is well known as wrestlers like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. In the 90s, he adopted a swaggering, dictatorial in-ring alter ego who screamed at wrestlers, and he was the headline at the pay-per-view events. Well into this decade, Mr. McMahon retained control over the WWE's creative direction, okay? So, again, he had control of the creative direction. This is obviously no surprise. Now, obviously, I do not follow WWE. That's why this is new information to me, what I'm going to read you. But I imagine a lot of you guys did not follow WWE back then. And so it should absolutely blow your mind. Okay. Now keep in mind when I read this, that the details of the case with Janel Grant are that Vince McMahon hired this girl under the understanding that she was going to be having sex with him and lots of other executives. He turned her out. He used her as a sex doll. He did unbelievably insane things to her. When we get to that section where, you know, some of the details from the lawsuit that we haven't covered yet, you're going to be like, oh my God. So basically she's there, you know, to be a sex doll. And I don't care if it was consensual, non-consensual. Okay. That's the only part I push back on Janel Grant about is like, don't tell me this is non-consensual. Right. But very clearly part of her employment was that she was Vince McMahon's girl and she got passed around, bottom line, right? So keep that in mind when I read this part, okay? So for about as long, Mr. McMahon has faced accusations of sexual misconduct, which he has repeatedly denied. In 92, blah, blah, blah. This is this thing about the girl that he supposedly raped in 1986. But this is what I'm talking about right here, dude. Okay, so he's in charge of the creative direction of this company, and WWE, meanwhile, made sexualized treatment of women a core part of its brand. In 2003, the company initiated the WWE Diva Search, a competition to find female performers who sometimes wrestled. Physical appearance and low-cut tops were an explicit part of the appeal. Mr. McMahon also filmed fictional promotions with his real-life daughter, Stephanie McMahon, a wrestler and longtime WWE executive, in which Miss McMahon's character was made. Miss McMahon's character made salacious accusations about her father's character. Okay, this is Vince McMahon controlling the creative direction of the company, and this is what he wrote into, or had them write into the script about his own daughter. This is what Stephanie McMahon says in the story. Every time I went out to dinner with one of your business associates, I was 17 years old. You don't think they told me what you promised them I would do? Miss McMahon asked him in one of the promotions, which aired on television during the matches. In the creative directing, he included a storyline where his 17-year-old daughter was promised to have sex with people in the company as executives. Okay. Now, obviously this is not real, but this is written into a script. It's his real daughter. It's his real daughter. She's a teenager, and he actually had them write into the script that he had promised other executives that his 17-year-old daughter would have sex with them if she was hired. Think about that for a second. I really, you know, if you're like, oh, come on, man. Come on, dude. It's just it's not real. She's a teen. Dude, you think I would ever put a fucking idea like that into the world about my own daughter? I am way more shocked by that than I am any of this other stuff. It's like, it's his daughter, dude. It's his daughter. He met with the creative guys and he's like, okay, so in this part, this is what we want to do. We want her to confront me about me promising other executives that she would fuck them. If I was like one of these guys, right, I'd be like, wait, what, dude? Yeah. You're like, are you sure you don't want to get like an actress so it's not your real daughter? It's not your real fucking daughter. You want us to write that about your teenage daughter? You want her to say those words to you? You want to put that in her head? Like it's not real, but it is an exaggeration of reality of what all this is because, oh, we're looking for sexualized diva wrestlers, which is exactly what they do. And so you want to put in her head that there is a world where you would promise sexual favors from her to grown executives? That's so insane to me, dude. All right, so now we get to the bombshell about this girl who is the accuser of Vince McMahon. I have seen an unbelievable amount of mixed feedback on my videos. A lot of it just based on what platform I put it on. I put it on YouTube. I see, bottom line, my entire position on this has just been that she makes her own decisions because she's a grown-up, right? She's a grown-up. I don't want to hear about that it was an assault if she was doing this behavior for 3 years nearly daily, okay? I don't want to hear it. Trauma bonding, all of that stuff, whatever. She's a grown-up, okay? I'm not saying that Vince McMahon is without fault. He is definitely with plenty of fault, and we're going to get to that in the lawsuit. But when I told you there's a bombshell, that is exactly what this is, and I say that because I have not heard a single person cover this, which is very interesting, okay? So why do I have this photograph of her up? Okay. The answer is because I found it very curious that there was a picture of her out, period. Okay. Especially because they put her real name out and put this picture up. When do you ever hear the real name of an anonymous person who is, when do you hear the real name of an anonymous? But like, when do you hear the real name associated with accusations like this? They always keep that stuff quiet if they can. They, her and her attorney bringing this case, they intentionally put her name into this thing, right? Her name is in this, and then they put this picture out. Now, I started thinking about this as I started to realize that they had made such a concerted effort to make her seem very inexperienced, naive, and young, right? And I'm reading these things, and I'm starting to try to really read between the lines and is there any indication of the reality of her experience or inexperience, or as an example, her age? All right. Because bottom line, the way they wrote this out is they made her seem like she is a year out of college, or, a couple things out of, because they talked about internships, right? They talked about these things as if she's a very young person who is very inexperienced. I read in one article that this was her first job, okay? And so obviously you're like, okay, so she must be really young. They put this photograph out, and what's really interesting about it is you can't find any other pictures of her. She does not exist on the internet except for this one picture. And so I'm like, what's going on? How old is she, right? How old is this girl? Now you look at this picture, how old is this girl? And you go off of what's been written about her, how old is she, right? Now, if I told you she's 26 years old, you'd be like, that sounds about right, right? If I told you she's 29 years old even, you'd be like, that sounds a lot, probably a little older than I was imagining. Now, if I told you that she was right now 22 years old, meaning that she was like just barely 18 when she got hired, and then you connect that over to the part where he had a storyline where his 17-year-old daughter is getting pimped out to other executives in the company, that would be pretty mind-blowing also, right? You're like, Jesus, this is like him living out some kind of fantasy that he had like when he wrote this crazy weird thing into the storyline about his own daughter. Like, that would be mind-blowing, right? So if that's mind-blowing, then there has to be an opposite mind-blower also. If I told you she's 44 years old, I would imagine that would be a bombshell in terms of your understanding of what happened here, right? Like if she was 40 years old when she was hired by WWE, I think the narrative of, oh my God, she had no idea what was going on and she just can't be held responsible for her, for her decisions would probably explode in the mind of anyone who has 7 brain cells to rub together, because she's 44, dude. She was born in 1980, okay? This girl right here is 44 years old. You're telling me this is a recent picture? This is a recent picture? This is her yesterday? Now, I don't have any idea. I have no ability to tell you whether this is recent or not, but I could tell you that the reason that this picture is the only one that's out is because it makes her look young. My opinion. Because where are all the other pictures? If they don't care that people know what she looks like, why is there only this one picture? And my theory is that it's misdirection so people don't realize she is not only an adult, like, because I was saying, like, when I was thinking she's 27 years old. I'm like, dude, give me a break, okay? You can't blame this on something like you're a grown up. She was 40, dude. 40. In 2022, when she lost her job, she was 42. 42, dude. Okay? So think about that. You tell me that that's not a bombshell as it relates to your understanding of this case, that she was 42 years old when she signed the NDA. Now, I do want to make perfectly clear, though, I am not without empathy for this girl. I'm gonna just straight up, all right? Like, I have to live in a world where she's held responsible for her own, well, not even held responsible. She didn't do anything wrong, really. If she wants to get ran through by an entire team of guys and let Vince McMahon take a dump on her chest, like, she's allowed to do that. It's just important that I live in a world where if a person is pretending that things were non-consensual, that I can say, I don't believe that was non-consensual, I really do think that she should get paid, though. Given the experience that she had, like, dude, if she wants to come out and be like, I got passed around the entire executive team, even if she was asking for it, dude, whatever, man. If she's going to get a check, she should get a check. And, Vince was so reckless and so irresponsible in this situation, like him getting cracked like this. It's like, dude, sorry, man. You couldn't have figured out that this was going to blow up in your face? What did you, like, you know what I mean? Or at the very least, that this was a tremendous risk to your position and your company. You should have figured that out, dude. But the other thing, though, is I want to go through some of the stuff from the lawsuit that is kind of like factual, and I want to start talking about why she's being presented as young, given certain things that are factual. And if you take those pieces of information and go, okay, cool, what else could this possibly mean? So, like, look at this, okay? So WWE's billionaire founder and executive chairman, Vince McMahon, lived in a penthouse duplex in Miss Grant's apartment building, all right? And this is where she lived with her parents. And she was apparently the primary caregiver for both her parents, and then they passed away, all right? So what does that tell you about her history? It means she's a rich kid, okay? This is not someone who's poor. It means she's a rich kid, okay? She's wealthy. Okay, Vince McMahon doesn't have a penthouse in some building that is not where rich people live. And what we know is that after her parents passed away, they had to file bankruptcy, and she lost that apartment. So she was like down and out, dude. Like she had lost. So like her family was wealthy, but then they died, and then boom, she has nothing, and there's a bankruptcy. Okay, so what I could say about this is that her parents well, I guess this is all hypothetical, but like there is a world where her parents spoiled her rotten, okay? Spoiled her rotten, where if she really never had a job before, then that could have been because her parents were taking care of her. And then when her parents got sick for whatever happened and the money stopped coming in, they weren't in a position to start parenting her then, right? They babied her entire life, so she has no idea how to take care of herself. She's also has some proclivities of just, she likes a little bit of this, right? She likes a little bit of this. But her parents die and bankrupt. She has no idea where she's going to get money to come in. And so she goes and finds a daddy, right? She very quickly goes and finds a daddy. And that's how this kind of starts. So as a parent of daughters, this, like, looking at it this way, like, oh man, like I don't know. I don't even know how to describe the way I feel about this. It's like, I think about what would happen if I wasn't around and my daughters grew, because like anyone's pretty daughters can end up in a situation where they have been conditioned to fall into a thing like this. You know what I mean? That's why you have to have a dad in the family. But that kind of, it's like, if she doesn't know how to take care of herself, every hot girl has one way that they know they can take care of themselves one way or the other. But like you read this stuff, it's like after her family passed away, Miss Grant dedicated herself to finding gainful employment. Neighbors in her building provided career advice and sought her assistance with personal events. Miss Grant used these non-paying roles and volunteer work in the community to build her resume. This is a rich kid. Okay, there's a rich kid who had no idea what she was going to do, right? So the building's resident manager wanted to help, and so she messaged McMahon to ask whether he would talk to her, sharing that Miss Grant had been through a hardship and would do great things if given a fresh start. McMahon enthusiastically responded, hell yes. So this is how this starts. She's a rich kid, and so another rich person who knows her reaches out to McMahon to open up this conversation. Okay, so this is not like, I mean, I feel like I have to say this, that like, this is not just like some like nymphomaniac gutter trash, although maybe some of that, was just like, God, all I want is just some dick from everybody. You have to allow this to happen, and you have to, whatever, like she was willfully doing this. But the way they make this sound in this story, and it's the part they're not saying, I can read between the lines, I'm good at this, dude, is she has no idea what she's going to do, and her only way of kind of making it through the world had always been her family. If you think that a person can't get to 40 years old like that, you're wrong. Okay? And so she ends up with McMahon. He offers, I'll get you a job, whatever. He turns her out, and that's what happens. I mean, it's like, so just as we go through the rest of this, as I go through the rest of this lawsuit, and you hear some of the stuff that Vince McMahon did to her, consensual or not, I actually want you to think about this girl through that lens for this part, because I don't like the idea that people think that I'm just like, oh, Vince McMahon's a great dude. She's responsible. I'm not saying that. I'm saying she did willfully do this stuff, right? But to be fair to her, look at her through this lens. She's a rich kid who has no idea how to take care of herself. None. Her family lives in the same building as Vince McMahon. She's always been rich, dude. And so she got to 40, fucking clueless. And then she lost her family, and she is on the outs. Does not know what she's going to do. Rich person introduces her to Vince McMahon. He sees sexy-ass girl, and he's like, oh, yeah, man. I'll help her out, And then he finds out that she is DTF, super DTF, and that's how we end up with this. But she, you know what I mean? She's like a helpless, like I can, now when you bring the parents in, I can't not see her as a helpless little girl who has no idea how to take care of herself. And you know what? That's because I have daughters, and so I am putting my daughters into these stories. And bottom line, doesn't matter. The entire reason I demand that we live in a world where people are held responsible for their own decisions is because I parent my kids that way. Bottom line. That this story is why it's so important that you parent daughters well. Now, I have completely run out of time, so there is a lot more stuff to talk about in this story, but I'm going to do it in a separate video because I want to talk about some of the really gnarly stuff that Vince McMahon did to her. Because, God, man, I mean, it's so crazy. And we're going to talk about the Brock Lesnar stuff. So that is a separate video. Otherwise, this video is going to be an hour long, and that's too long for this channel. So look out for that. If you watch this whole, I mean, you're really, trust me, you're going to want to watch the other one. Brock Lesnar, way more involved, and Vince McMahon abused, I mean, he abused the shit out of this girl, dude. Anyway, but sounds like she wanted it. So look for that video. That's coming. Subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell. Love you guys. Bye.